thank you so much for the Nagpur Arthroscopy Association and Society and Dr. Sonar for their kind invitation. So I'll be talking on revision ACL reconstruction. And as you've heard in the previous talks, that probably this is the commonest surgery which is done across the globe as far as arthroscopic surgeries is concerned. So it's pretty obvious that you are going to encounter either your own cases or your colleagues' cases to be revised for. Throughout our training years, we've been taught that whenever you're revising something, you should know why has something failed. Let it be trauma, let it be arthroplasty, let it be any other device or any other surgery for that matter. So that brings us to the question that why do ACL reconstructions fail? And to be very honest, the search for the holy grail is still on because we still don't know why do ACLs really fail. And whatever we are trying to cover in this talk is probable reasons to understand the causes of failure and how do we apply them in clinical practice. So when would you say that it has failed? By definition, any lack of success is a failure where something is not functioning. So in an ACL reconstruction, do you say that when the patient has feel that it has failed, that's when it's a failure? Or when you clinically examine a patient which has been operated by a colleague and you feel it has failed? Or the radiologist who does not have any clinical bearing would talk on the MRI saying that the ACL has failed? Or is it all of the above? So let's look at this example. This is a case which has been operated by me around 4 years back. Patient does not have any clinical instability. His Lachman is positive, but his drawers is not significantly positive. He had come in for a twisting injury. We were concerned about the meniscus, so we got an MRI done. And here you can see that he's got laxity of the PCL, but the graft is intact. So then, is this labeled as a failed ACL? So in short, there is no universally accepted definition of what qualifies as a failed ACL reconstruction. By and large, these are the things you would say when you call it as a failed one. One, a knee which demonstrates recurrent instability, probably due to graft failure. A stable knee with limited range of motion. So you've gone to the other extreme. An unstable knee has become an arthrofibrosed knee. Or patients with clinically low knee scores on the KOOS score. So Freddie Fu and co-workers had come up with this University of Pittsburgh classification where they spoke about either technical errors causing failure or trauma or biology. But what we see in clinical practice is that the technical failures are probably the highest chunk. With that, many times there is an associated pathology which is missed. And yes, trauma does play a role when, especially in the active population, when they get back to their physical sports, and there could be a re-trauma. So again, Freddie Fu and co-workers thought that up to 79% of the times there could be technical failure. And what could cause the technical failure? The improper tunnel placement was probably the commonest. Inadequate tensioning of the graft, improper graft fixation, and improper graft choice. We have heard everyone cover about most of the talks or most of the topics that we were talking about. But if you look at literature about failure, if you look at meta-analysis, even in 1990s, technical errors were still the main cause. In the technical errors, it was primarily the improper tunnel placement. And the same thing holds good even in 2000 and the second decade of the 21st century. Likewise, again in 1990s, there was non-anatomical tunnel placement, which was probably the highest cause. And again in the first 2 decades of this century, you're seeing that non-anatomical tunnel placement still remains the commonest cause. So what we are still not understanding is that after so much of extensive trying to dissect out the ACL, trying to understand the biomechanics, why is it that we are failing to get the tunnel placement exactly where we would want to? And we still don't have an answer on this. Many times there are missed injuries. So we look at the knee, but we don't look at the patient. So it is extremely important to assess the overall alignment. And you can see that we would assume that there is a patient with a physiological varus, But when you do a scanogram, you clearly see that there is the Mikulicz line is passing through the medial compartment. And in this case, you have to realign the bony osteotomy. Whether you want to do a slope correction osteotomy or whether you want to do a primary ACL with HTO is another story, but this is one of the important causes for failure. Likewise, missed PLC corners. If you look at patients who had come for revision and a complete PLC corner was missed, and you can see that the entire lateral drive-through spine is present. And in this case, all which was required primarily was to address the posterior lateral corner. So when it comes to the technical errors or when you come to the surgical tips, when you're doing a revision ACL, you want to assess the bony tunnel configuration. All of these patients have an MRI, and what you need to see is whether the tunnel is anatomic or non-anatomic. If it is anatomic, whether it's expanded or non-expanded. Again, if it's non-anatomic, whether it's an overlap tunnel or a non-overlap tunnel, and accordingly, you're going to plan this. So for an anatomic expanded tunnel, you're either going to do a BTB with a large bone block or you're going to do a bone grafting. For a non-expanded tunnel, you can just use the pre-existing bone tunnels. In an overlap tunnels, it's your choice whether you want to do a bone graft on the tunnel and do it as a staged part. And in non-overlap tunnel, probably that's the easiest bet where you're just going to do a new tunnel altogether. So when these patients come with an MRI, it's mandatory to do a CT scan for these patients to assess the dimension. So what looks like a benign MRI on your extreme left side shows on a tunnel expansion of nearly 14 millimeters at the mouth. And in these cases, you might not consider doing a primary ACL because that's going to cause a primary revision ACL because that's going to cause failure with such an expansion. So you might go ahead and do a bone grafting. So CT scans is mandatory. That's a definite take home for me from this talk. So when you're looking at these tunnel possibilities, what is desirable is where the tunnels are in an absolute anatomical position. What is acceptable is where they're not completely anatomic, and what is surely not unacceptable or what is not acceptable is where they're non-anatomic. You know, the green and the red are easy situations because you're just going to use either the same tunnels or create new tunnels. What is challenging is the second part where there is an overlap and you don't know how to deal with them. So this is, you're looking at an example of a femoral tunnel, entirely incorrect tunnel. So you can just press in a new tunnel and that's about it. These are the easier ones. What about the overlap ones? And that is where you can, what I do is if I have an intact lateral wall, I still try to make an entry point with my RF, with my all at 90 degrees. I would probably be using radiographic control also to verify that my tunnel is fine. And if I feel that many times it does not allow me to get in a primary bony spot to anchor my chondral awl, which very commonly happens, then what I do is I use a drill, a cannulated drill in that position of flexion, try to get to the position which is a desirable position, and through the cannulated drill bit, keeping it on the anatomical spot, I'm going to drill my bead pin through and through. And then I'll just withdraw my drill bit and rather the cannulated drill and see whether I'm happy with the position. If it is significantly overlapped or if it is a big tunnel, that's when you may have to use bone grafts as a first stage, and you can use a cylinder plug. And how to harvest these cylinder plugs, I'll just show them eventually. It is important to see where exactly you want to fill in the tunnel. So a crushed form of bone graft might not be helpful, and that is the reason why you would want to use plugs. What about this scenario? So proponents of the all-inside could always debate on this, that yes, this is one of the concerns why they have moved to all-inside. Probably I also have a bias out here because this is one of my own patients who came in with a pseudocyst, and you can see the soft tissue component and the bony component, and this patient did not have any of the inflammatory parameters elevated. So this is what was done. after clearance, and you possibly can't go ahead and do a primary ACL in this situation. You would want to go ahead, do a bone grafting. Now, when you're on the tibial side, it's not necessary that you need to use in plugs, and that is when you can use crushed or mosselized bone graft as well. But if you want to use a cylinder plug, this is the technique that I do. I expose the iliac crest, the inner table, the outer table, both are exposed clearly. And then using my ACI instrumentation, I would harvest in plugs, which are probably around 18 to 20 millimeters long. And then I stack them in. Like I was mentioning earlier, if it comes to the tibia, you can crush it, use cancellous bone because primarily it's cancellous bone out there. You can also use a TCP paste if you would want, but you want the entire bone stock to return if you want to plan for a revision ACL. How do you put in your tunnels when it comes to revision ACL, especially on the tibia? If you're going to do an all inside, as long as you're having a cortex which is intact, you can very well move your tunnel further medially away and create a bony socket and then rely on that cortical strength. Alternatively, what Peter Furlong and his group has shown is that you can use a lateral tibial tunnel, and that allows a completely native tunnel which is not relying on the medial side cortical integrity. Yes, graft passage may be a challenge, but by and large, when we can get a BTB to pass throughout, you don't have too many killer turn problems out here. Previously, there was some discussion about taking out of hardwire. So I think it's extremely important that whenever you're embarking on a revision ACL, and if there is some metal work inside, you need to have the entire screw set which is available. And these are commercially available in India also. And we have the local guys who can also come up with these implant removal sets. Intraoperative fluoroscopy is something really helpful to identify the bony tunnels, because sometimes there is so much of fibrosis that you really can't keep shaving the entire area. Also, very routinely, I use my radio frequency probe to reach up to bone so that if at all any metalwork needs to be exposed, which is buried inside, becomes evident. Fluoroscopy to drill in the tunnels is also helpful. That's something which I would pay a lot of emphasis on, which allows graft passage in an anatomical fashion. The challenge is the substance, the tunnels, the implant which is embedded in bone and there is bony overgrowth. So when you have to remove these staples, and that is the challenge on the tibial side, because you may have to use an osteotome to really decorticate that portion for that bony overgrowth and then take off the staples. And that causes violation of the structural integrity. And when you're doing your revision ACL in that particular patient, that's when you're worried if at all there's any kind of failure. But do not take metalwork lightly, it may be challenging. And if it is not interfering, this is during our fellowship in Singapore, these are the screws. I don't even know which screws these are, but you don't need to bother about it because these screws can be completely far away from your anatomical site and you can just leave them in situ because they're embedded inside. So in summary, if I were to just talk about the tunnels, which is most important, what we need to understand is whether they're expanded and they're non-expanded, and likewise whether they're anatomic and non-anatomic. And according to that, you're going to plan your entire management because that's the most important thing. And if I were to talk about causes of failure which leads to revision, yes, traumatic failure may be there, and that's why go slow on your rehab. It's not necessary that you're in a race with your colleague surgeon that you need to do an accelerated rehab. Premature return to sports. Our Indian patients do not understand the importance of waiting. So any active individual who wants to get back to sporting activities, clearly in the pre-op counseling, I tell them 1 year is the bare minimum that you're going to take. You're going to be training in the interim period. We have spoken about all the technical aspects. So that's something we need to pay a lot of attention to. Missed injuries is again something very important. So deal with the missed injuries so that your primary ACLs don't fail. And lastly, biological factors. Very rarely you have these patients where the graft is intact, but there is no ligamentization, and there is no answer for that. When you don't have the cause for the failure, it becomes that much more challenging, because you can't assure the patient that he is going to have a second surgery which may be successful. Thank you for your patient listening.